Hello and welcome to the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast. I'm your host, Nate Goss. This Sunday, March 2nd, is Hollywood's biggest night as they celebrate both the movies of last year and the industry that made them at the 97th Academy Awards ceremony. Also, for 10 years now, we at the library have had a tradition on this podcast where Becky King, the library's audiovisual librarian, joins me to talk about the movies we enjoyed and maybe some we didn't enjoy over the past year. We also take this moment to talk about all the ways that you can find these movies at the library. So let's jump right in and talk about the Oscars. All right, Becky, welcome. 10th year in a row. We're here.
I know, crazy.
I know.
Isn't it? Okay.
To talk about the big night. Now, it is a little different this time because usually we do it the night after.
Right.
The day after.
Right.
But this time we're like, hey, why don't we talk about it beforehand? And then we can kind of be part of the discussion and the predictions.
Mystery, right?
And yeah, exactly. First of all, basic question. Are you excited for the Oscars on Sunday? How are you feeling about it coming up?
You know what? I am excited. I feel for the first time in a few years, it seems like it's much more wide open than it has been in the past. I think there's no slam dunk in especially the Best Picture categories and some of the acting categories as well. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a fun night to see what happens.
There really is no clear frontrunner.
Right.
The nominees themselves are kind of all over the map.
Right, exactly.
So let's get into that a little bit.
Okay.
I thought what would be fun is if we just kind of went through the movies in the Best Picture category. And as we talk, we'll just sort of mention some of the other nominations and maybe what we think might happen.
Right.
So, first on the list, we've got Sean Baker's Honora. Did you see this movie?
I did, and I loved it. That was one of the most surprisingly entertaining movies I saw this year, I think. It's a movie that's probably not for everyone, but it starts out as kind of a Cinderella story. It turns into this crazy farce, and then it actually has a super, kind of heartwarming ending, depending on how you look at it.
Depending on how you look at it, there's a lot of different ways to interpret it.
Right, yeah. I took it as a certain way. We can talk about that, but I enjoyed it completely. Sean Baker, you and I are already fans of. We've seen his other work, like The Florida Project and Tangerine.
And let's do a quick plug because our cinema club next month is going to be showing The Florida Project. So if you see Honora and you like it and you want to see more of Sean Baker's work, we'll be showing it.
Yeah, okay.
But we've been a fan of his for a long time.
Right.
And I don't really think he's gotten a lot of Academy recognition up
this
until
year
now.
He is. It's about time, right?
It is about time. Mikey Madison, the star
Yes.
of Honora, is nominated for actress in a leading role. And I think she, might have a shot.
I think she's got a shot.
Yeah.
And I loved her performance only because she is the star of that movie and it's someone you haven't seen a lot before. And all of a sudden, boom, she hits. And I thought she was fabulous.
Exactly. And, Honora, it's her movie.
It is.
And
definitely.
it doesn't work without her. And she really pulls it off.
Right.
All right, so the next movie, you're going to have to lead this because I didn't see
Okay.
it. So this is The Brutalist.
Right.
So let's talk about, what's this movie about?
It's about an architect post-World War II who comes to the U.S. and kind of needs to start over, and he has a very distinct style. My 2 words about The Brutalist are brutally long.
I heard there's even an intermission, right?
There is an intermission, which isn't so bad, but it's just brutally long. Not sure it needed to be that long, and just very dark. I mean, Adrian Brody gave a great performance. He may win. We'll see. It's not a movie that I enjoyed. Is it well done? Sure.
What do you got against architecture, Becky?
It's not the architecture. It's the story, and there's a lot. It's heavy. I'll just put
dark,
heavy.
Yeah, I was going to say by dark. Do you mean heavy?
Heavy.
So, yeah. And something
it's
long.
Well done. I mean, you can't argue that it's not. It's just be in the mood for it.
Now, what do you think about Brody in that nomination for actor in a leading role?
He's been winning. I think it'll be interesting when we get to A Complete Unknown, we can talk
about that. All right. Well, then, let's jump right into the next one. You just mentioned it, A Complete Unknown.
Yeah.
This is the Bob Dylan biopic with Timothée Chalamet playing the Dylan character.
Right.
This is another one I did not see, so I'm going to have you take this one away.
You're going to
well.
love this one because you're such a music, fan. But I have to say, this was the one I was most pleasantly surprised by of all the pictures I saw this year. I'm not a big Dylan fan. I'm not a big Timothée Chalamet fan. And I loved it. I mean, it was really well done. It like the 60s, that whole vibe. I am a big fan of Joan Baez, and the actress who plays her in the film is really good.
That's Monica Barbaro. Barbara. That's Joan Baez in the movie.
Yeah, and she is. She's not even a singer, and Timothée Chalamet isn't known as a singer either. And they both did a great job, and they both sang live, which you know what? You don't see that in that many musicals, films that are musicals per se. So that took guts on both of their parts. I was really impressed. And I really enjoyed the story.
Yeah, and the movie was done by James Mangold, who did Walk the Line. So if you like that Johnny Cash biopic, I mean, that was the kind of thing, too, is in that movie they all sang for that one as well. So that seems to be something he seems to emphasize with his actors.
And then, so we were talking about the best actors. So again, Timothée Chalamet, I think he gets kudos. I mean, he's still so young.
Yeah.
And I laughed at he won the SAG Award, Best Actor, which I think was a little bit of a surprise maybe. And he just said, like, I worked so hard on this movie. And I think he did, you know, it was like several years. And I think he might be gaining steam, you know. I think it was a surprising performance. He's a young actor. Maybe they're going to reward him. He may beat Adrian Brody. We'll see.
And I saw, I don't know if it was the same awards, but I saw part of his speech where he was saying that, you know, he kind of wants to be one of the greats. He wants to be up there with Marlon Brando and De Niro.
Which is pretty gutsy.
It is gutsy,
I think already the Oscar voting had been over by then, so hopefully, but maybe he's gaining momentum.
Well, you know, since we're talking about Chalamet, maybe we'll skip to Dune Part 2 because he's in that movie as well. He plays Paul, the main sort of character in that.
No, I did not see that one.
You didn't see that one.
Right.
I did. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about that except for if you like the first Dune. I really thought the second one was a really great continuation of that.
Okay, good.
And if you love sci-fi that really digs into like geopolitics and Denis Villeneuve, who has made these movies, I think he's done a really good job of sort of that world building. It's got such
they look amazing.
It's got such a texture to it, and it's so big. So when you just kind of want to have that big movie going experience,
being absorbed,
highly
is there
recommend
another
it.
one coming? Is there going to be a longer series?
Yes. I don't know how many ultimately, but the movie, and I'll just tell you right now, the movie really just kind of ends. So they're going to have to add another
for a
one.
sequel.
Yeah. So so definitely, I don't know that there's a whole lot more to talk about that. I imagine it might do well in some of the technical categories.
Sure, I bet. Yeah.
But if it's just sort of, if you like the first one, there's no reason you wouldn't like the second one.
Okay. Good.
Unless you've read the books, and I've heard people who have read the book don't.
That's always
there's
case.
Always some some people who don't like what he's done with it, but luckily I haven't read the book.
Right,
so.
yeah.
All right, so let's back it up again and let's talk a little bit about Conclave. Now this is one that I did see and I liked it, and I've been a little surprised the whole time that this to me doesn't seem like a movie that would necessarily be in an Oscars race.
Really?
Well, I mean, it's got the prestige actors.
Right. Well, I think that's a big chunk of it.
But I mean, even just sort of the genre of it, it's sort of just a good
it's a suspense
thriller.
Yeah. I think the actors make the movie. First of all, it's a beautiful movie. I mean, the way it was shot and things like that, it's a beautiful looking movie. Again, the actors made the movie, and it's a great ensemble. You've got like Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, and stuff like that.
And so for those who don't know about this movie, it's about the Vatican.
The Pope has died.
The Pope has died, and they need to select a new one.
Right.
And you wouldn't think that they could make a really good psychological thriller out of that, but they really do.
Well, and all the what's the word?
The political maneuvering.
The maneuvering behind the scenes, right? Yeah, that's the thrilling part of it all.
Yeah,
behind the scenes,
building your alliances and all the sort of wheelings and dealings behind the scenes, exactly.
But I'm not surprised that it's Best Picture nominee and things like that. The only nomination I was surprised in that one was Isabella Rossellini in the supporting actress category. She plays like a nun in the film. She was fine. She didn't have a whole lot to do in that.
It's an extremely small part, too.
Right. So I'm whatever. I don't think she'll win, but she's a wonderful actress, but I don't know that she needed a nomination for it. But I think Conclave is picking up a lot of steam because there is so much indecision in the Best Picture categories and winners and the other awards, the other awards that are going on during the year. And I think Conclave is kind of working its way up as a reliable movie, a Hollywood movie, if you want to call it that, a Hollywood-looking movie. Reliable actors and so forth. And I think that's kind of why its prestige has been raised.
Yeah, I mean, especially compared to some of the movies on here, it's definitely a likable movie. It's probably got some of the more populist appeal between some of these nominations.
And it's got a twist at the end, which is which is good.
All right, and then we move on to the movie that has the most nominations, Emilia Perez.
Right. And probably the most controversial maybe of all of them in that category.
Yes.
Did you like it?
No. I really did not like this movie, and that's all I'll really say. Because other people might like it, and I don't want to ruin their fun, but I was not a fan of this movie.
I give high marks for originality and approach and stuff like that. The subject matter. It's just, again, another dark movie, heavy movie.
And a bit of a musical.
I wouldn't call it a musical. I mean, they work in like
There's
a
about
lot of
4 or
music
5 musical
moments,
numbers in there.
or they express themselves in a musical way. That part didn't bother me because I'm a musical fan. But again, I don't consider this a typical musical. It goes in such a dark direction, heavy direction. The ending is tough. And that's all I'll say because I don't want to give too much away. But go into it expecting a ride because it is a ride.
Yes.
Right?
Sure.
People love it or hate it. It's one of those love it or hate it movies.
Yeah. But what do you think are the categories where it actually has a shot?
I think Zoe Saldana is a lock on the supporting actress category, but I think that's because she's actually the lead actress in the movie. I mean, she's first in the credits. She's probably has the most screen time, and she gives a really great performance. And I'm sure it was all posturing to put her into that supporting actress category so that she would carry that, which she will. I mean, Best Director, I think it's nominated for. Also, Best International Feature Film. Part of it's in English, part of it's in Spanish. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think in a lot of years past, if you had an international film that was in the Best Picture category, it was kind of a lock for that international feature. Right. But this year, we've got multiple movies that are in both categories.
Right.
And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, maybe how it plays out in that international category.
Right. It's going to be tough. And I think the one you're talking about is I'm Still Here.
Yeah, which is the next on our list anyways. Right. This is another one I haven't seen. I really want to see it.
Yeah, it's
You've
excellent.
seen it.
Yeah.
So what's that one about?
That one takes place in Brazil. It's a 1970s. And it's a political, he's like a former politician who is like taken, or I won't say kidnapped, but eventually it turns out that he's taken in for questioning by the government for some, subversive activities. And his wife and daughter are also questioned, but they're actually let go. No one knows what happened to him. They can't find out anything. And the movie really focuses on the effect on the family. He's got 5 kids. The wife is behind trying to figure out what happened and kind of finding out maybe some of the things that he was involved in over the years. And it's based on a true story, which is really devastating. And so at the end of the movie, you do find out kind of what happened. And it ends with her very elderly and kind of getting some closure about what happened about things. Fernanda Torres is nominated in Best Actress category. She's outstanding. Again, she is the movie. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but it's her and her reactions to everything that make the movie. So that's excellent.
And yeah, I mean, that actress category is so stacked.
Right. And so it'll be really interesting. She's a favorite of mine in that category, along with Mikey Madison. We'll see what happens. And again, also nominated because I think it's in Portuguese actually, but also nominated in the International Feature Film category.
Yeah,
so
right.
I think between that and Emilia Perez, I haven't seen the other one. Oh, I did see Flow. Flow is also
Flow
nominated.
is the animated, and that might do better in the animated category.
Right.
And that one is it's an international feature, but from what I know,
there's no
dialogue.
Yeah.
It's because it's all animals.
Right.
So.
Yeah. But it's a great movie.
Yeah.
But I think maybe in the international feature film it'll be duking out between I'm Still Here and Emilia Perez.
Yeah. All right. And then next up on the list, we've got the Colson Whitehead adaptation, Nickel Boys. So maybe some of our listeners have read the book,
right,
but this is the movie. And I haven't seen it, but I've read a lot about its interesting choice to do everything from kind of that point of view angle.
Right, from the camera point
from the
of view. Right.
camera's point of view.
Right, and it takes you out of, I won't say it takes you out of it because you're immediately engrossed in it, but it is a different viewpoint into the film and the character and things like that. It takes a while to get used to it, maybe is what I'm trying to say. Really, it's another beautiful movie. It's a hard story. If you've read the book,
heavy one.
Yeah. If you have read the book, you'll know more of what it's like. But a beautiful film. And I think deservedly to be in this category, and I don't know why it's so overshadowed this year. Maybe because it hasn't been available widely.
Yeah.
It needs to be back in theaters and stuff like that. It's streaming now.
It was very hard to see because I think it got a very limited release, and I don't even know up until recently. I don't even think you could really rent it.
Right. Yeah. So and I just saw it the other night, so I finally was able to catch up with it. I think once people see it, they'll realize how deserved that nomination is.
Sure. All right. We're getting near the end here, so we've got.
Should we save the worst for last?
What's the substance is next?
Yeah.
I don't think you were a fan of this movie.
I was not a fan of the movie.
I really liked it.
Did you? I knew you were going to say that. That is so funny.
But every year there is always one or two movies I look at in this Best Picture category, and I think this is a movie that I think having it in that category actually does it a disservice. Like, this is such a genre movie.
That is a good point.
It is a body horror, grotesque movie.
Right.
If you are not a horror fan, do not watch this movie.
I mean,
it is hard to sit through, and the movies that it evokes, and I think it directly references.
I think it does, yeah.
I can name a few of them, like Carrie, The Shining even, The Thing, The Fly for sure.
What's the difference about all those movies? They were actually good.
Well, none of them though were nominated for.
I know.
This is not a prestige.
But you had actors in there that were nominated in the other movies that you mentioned.
Sure.
So,
and you've got Demi Moore nominated
we'll
here
talk
for
about
for actress. But this to me is like Sunset Boulevard meets The Thing and The Fly. And if that sounds interesting to you, it's another one that is just a wild ride.
It is a ride.
And I wish I would have seen it in theaters, because I think by the end, I mean, it is just so outrageous by the end.
Well, that's putting it mildly.
That I think it would have been a blast to see this in a theater with people. I think you have to be a fan of like body horror, grotesque
listen
horror
to yourself.
movies. Yes. And and I'm just saying this because I don't want people to listen to this and think that
this will be a nice movie.
And this is something I realize, really, I feel like maybe more than other years, this is the year where I want to recommend almost everything with a disclaimer.
Right,
like,
yeah.
It's not like there's
it's not for everyone, like Honora.
Honora's not for everyone.
Right.
Amelia Perez is not
Right.
for everyone. Substance is certainly not for everyone.
And
but
that doesn't mean they're not good.
Exactly. And I
know.
think that they definitely have their audiences.
Right.
All of these movies have their audiences. And so it is kind of nice, because I'm trying to think, maybe since Get Out, I don't know that you really don't see a lot of straight up horror movies in the Best Picture category.
I mean, but Get Out, I enjoy. I mean, I really liked that movie.
Sure.
But so there's always, I swear, there's one movie every year where you and I just vehemently disagree. I disagree on this one because besides just being a horror film, which isn't my favorite genre, it's just gross. You know what I mean?
is.
It's just gross. And we didn't even talk about what it's about. But, it's the themes are like, okay, the impossibly high standards for women in that industry, like the film industry. She's a television star. And then, youth wins, right? The beautiful youth always wins. But anyway, I just feel like anytime an actress makes herself look icky for a movie, it's considered such a brave choice. And so Demi Moore has been nominated. She's been winning. She was okay in the movie. Margaret Qualley plays the younger, the doppelganger, if you want to call
really
her
just
that.
as much in the movie.
More screen time,
Yes.
I think, than Demi Moore, and actually has harder stuff to do.
Yeah.
And I was with it for a while. It's interesting. It just gets increasingly gross as it goes on. And I swear the last 20 minutes, it's like, okay, we got it. You know what I mean? It just deteriorates into this really crazy sequence.
Yes. I will give just a quick description of what it's about. Is essentially Demi Moore plays an aging fitness TV personality, and she's basically lost her job, and they're looking for a replacement. And so she's realizing that as she's aging, her career might be up. She's pretty depressed about that, and then she finds out about this medical, I don't know, that's like a fluid or something. It's called the substance.
Yeah.
And if you do it, you basically hatch out of your own body a younger version of yourself.
But I don't think she knew that was what it meant.
No, there's so little. Yeah. There's so little that you really know about what even this is about. And that's really all you need to know. There's this younger version of her hatches outside of her body, and it goes from there, because the way it works is that each body gets basically a week.
Right, every other week.
And then every other week. And so they have to keep switching bodies, but you're actually taking from each body as you do that. And so it's a bizarre meditation on the aging process, on what it means to age.
I think the view of women.
And it's very much about the male gaze and the female body.
And youth.
Yes, and youth. And it might actually be an interesting, if you can handle it, I don't even know if I could, a double feature with Honora, because these are both chaotic, outlandish movies.
Okay, that is
frenetic, but they are also about women who have made a career out of using their bodies.
I don't have any problem with the message, and I think the message is on point. It's just that they take a sledgehammer to it. It's like, in case you didn't get it the first time, boom. In case you didn't get it the second time, boom. It just keeps, and then the ending is just like, okay,
yes,
we got it.
It is ratcheted up to the 10th degree.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. And it by the end, it really does, in that, if you want to talk genres, it really becomes a monster movie by the end.
It is, yeah.
So I was a fan. I don't necessarily think it deserves any Oscars, really.
Right.
But I just, as far as if we're just going to talk about the movies of the year, it's definitely up there for me.
Well, people were talking about it, no doubt.
Yes.
Whether it deserves all that is something else.
Okay. Last one on the list is we've got Wicked, which I've seen the musical. I did not see the film, so I can't really speak to it.
Yeah,
so.
Totally entertaining. I mean, I think Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande do it justice. It's fine. There's a part 2 coming, so maybe if it doesn't get any love this time around,
I think that was the turnoff for me, is I just didn't understand why it had to be stretched out so much.
I know. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah.
But is it, one of the great pictures of all time? No, but it was totally enjoyable, and it has a huge audience.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, maybe even listening to this.
Yeah, it was definitely good for the blockbusters, right?
I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was the highest grossing movie of the year, but I think it had to have been. So yeah. So nice to throw that in there as well. Why not?
Right.
So
right.
Okay, so those are our Best Picture nominees. There's not really a clear front runner. Do you have a prediction of who you think might win?
As much as I would love to see Anora win, I really do. I think Conclave might win just because there's going to be a lot of people not sure, right? Some will vote for The Brutalist. Some will vote for Anora. Complete Unknown maybe might upset. But I think it's going to be a Hollywood movie because I think the edgier ones like Anora and Amelia Perez will kind of split votes.
Sure.
So we'll see.
Are there any categories that you want to talk about but didn't have a Best Picture nomination?
A Real Pain.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
It's a great movie. I'm
Jesse
glad that
Eisenberg wrote it, directed it. Kieran Culkin's getting tons of love for the supporting actor category, and I think he'll win the Oscar. It's a story about 2 cousins who travel to Poland on a kind of a Holocaust tour.
Like a Jewish heritage trip, yeah.
Right, and because their grandmother has died and they want to learn a little bit more about their history, which sounds like it might be a little heavy, but it is so funny and
really funny. Very funny movie. A very sweet movie.
Right.
I just love the characters.
Both of them are excellent.
Both of them are great.
Right.
Yeah.
So it did get a screenplay nomination for Jesse Eisenberg. So
I do have a friend who has a theory with the Oscars.
Okay.
And he said if you want to see the movies that are going to continue to be talked about after the Oscars and have more of a legacy to them, look at the original screenplay category.
There you go. I agree with that completely.
Because he said usually the original screenplay category goes to the film that the voters aren't quite sure they want to give the big award to, but they know that there's something
Quality.
good there. There's something good there that they want to award.
Right.
And so, if A Real Pain were to win that for Jesse Eisenberg, that would be really interesting.
And Anora's in that category. That's awesome. Another movie that I'll talk about in a little bit is in there. But The Substance, I'll give it a screenplay nomination. I don't know if it needs the Best Picture nomination.
There's actually not a lot of dialogue in The Substance.
I know.
It's mostly visual.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Now, since this is our episode where we can talk a little bit about the year in film, is there anything that was completely shut out of the Oscars that you would want to actually talk about as being a movie that people should check out?
Just some other favorite. I think more of some of our other favorites during the year. So I'm going to mention September 5. It did get a screenplay nomination, so it wasn't completely shut out. I saw that recently, and that is such a good movie.
So what is September 5?
It's about the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, where a Palestinian militant group took Israeli athletes hostage. So based on real events. And there have been documentaries about that, all kinds of coverage in the past. But this is actually from the viewpoint of ABC, who was televising the Olympic Games that summer. And it's literally in the control room because they were covering it live. They had cameras all over the Olympic Village and stuff like that. So it's incredibly sobering, but you have this weird dichotomy of the games going on at the same time. Like Mark Spitz won 7 gold medals that summer, It's crazy. So it's a lot of what's going on in the control room, how they're deciding what we can show, what we can't show. Yeah. But great performances led by Peter Sarsgaard.
Would you say that's more of like a dramatic movie, or is it more like a thriller, like Argo?
It's more like an Argo thriller, suspense. You know, if anybody knows the story, they know the outcome, but just the intense pressure of what they were going through at the time. I think we're going to be showing that as one of our movie matinees coming up soon.
All right.
Yeah.
I've got a few that I'll just mention. Actually, I just got two. I got two I'll mention. Unfortunately, they're only available on streaming, which is true for a lot of these movies, unfortunately, and we can get into that a little bit. But we do have Rokus that you could check out if you need to get access to that. One of them is streaming on Max currently, and it's one of my favorite movies of the year. It's called Love Lies Bleeding. It stars Kristen Stewart as a gym manager, and this all takes place in like 1989. And she falls for Jackie, played by Katie O'Brien, who's an ambitious bodybuilder. She's sort of in this small town, and Jackie, the bodybuilder, is headed on her way to Vegas for this competition. But she kind of gets sucked into this dark world within this town that Kristen Stewart's character is involved in. Ed Harris is in the movie. Barely recognizable, plays a really gritty, kind of evil person in this movie. It's a very dark romance. It's another dark movie.
Okay.
I'll say that's, I wouldn't say it's heavy. It's pulpy.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like an erotic thriller a little bit. And again, it's another one that's very much about bodies because it's bodybuilders and it's all about sort of the strength of these women who are competing for this. It's a very gritty movie. So if you're looking for something that's kind of like a noirish, it's got that sort of late 80s, like 1989 new wave feel, so it's got a great soundtrack to it.
Kristen Stewart is doing amazing work, that's just the fact that she's in it, I think, is a recommendation.
That's just
and she picks really edgy stuff.
I was just going to say, to me, what the appeal factor was Kristen Stewart, because I think she's just this actress right now that she picks such interesting roles that you should just see anything she's in.
And she likes to work with interesting directors.
Exactly.
I think she's like left all her Twilight movies behind, and she's like moved on to way more challenging stuff.
And then another one everyone I've talked to who has seen this has really liked it and been pleasantly surprised by it, partially because it's got a very unfortunate title, and it's called My Old Ass.
Yeah.
And this is one that you can only really watch right now on Amazon Prime. But it stars Maisie Stella and it stars Aubrey Plaza. And Aubrey Plaza is always great. So if you like Aubrey Plaza and you think she's funny, this is just a great Aubrey Plaza movie. But Maisie Stella plays a younger version of a free-spirited teenager named Elliot. And her and her friends they take mushrooms for the first time.
Okay.
And on this trip, she is visited by an older version of herself. So again, maybe a little bit like the substance there. Yeah. But Aubrey Plaza plays an older version of herself, her old ass. And it's a coming-of-age movie that's very sweet and surprisingly touching, and I mean, it was getting a little dusty in the room while I was watching it near the end. It just ends up being a very powerful movie about kind of reckoning with your older self.
I've heard great things about it. I'm hoping that one gets a wider release, like on DVD and stuff as well. I think it will, because Aubrey Plaza I think is hot right now, so I think that will help its case.
So if you're looking for something more comedic, because we haven't talked a lot about a lot of comedies, so this is a very funny movie, very good coming of age movie that I highly recommend.
Good. I have one more that I want to mention because I always feel like I need to do people just looking for a good movie, like a heartwarming movie. There was one released this year that's called Nowhere Special, and it stars James Norton, who's a really gifted actor. He's not in a whole lot of stuff yet, but he will be. And it's based on a true story about a working class guy in Northern Ireland. He's a single dad to a 3-year-old son. And we learn right off the bat that he's not well. In fact, he only has a certain amount of time to live. And he's determined to find a suitable foster family for his 3-year-old. So this sounds like it's going to be utterly, sob fest and stuff like that. It is such an uplifting film. It's hard to describe it. First of all, the relationship between James Norton and Daniel Lamont, who is the little 3-year-old, that is his son, is amazing. This kid is a natural-born actor like you wouldn't believe. He may have been closer to 4 when they filmed it. I can't recommend it enough. It reminds me a little bit of the Florida Project in that regard, where you get such a great performance from a young person. Some of it's funny, some of it's heartwarming. And it's a movie to see when you just want to see like a nice story. Like, it's got all the feels.
Yeah, great. So, always good to have at least one of those recommendations.
I know, I always feel like I got to throw one in. So.
Okay, so before we fully wrap this up, we've talked about a lot of movies here. If the listeners want to catch up on some of them through the library, what are some avenues they can take to do that?
So some of them, luckily, are out already on DVD and Blu-ray. So I think Wicked, A Complete Unknown is coming out very quickly. I think in April, Conclave is out. Nora is coming out very very quickly. That has a release date.
I think that's getting a Criterion release,
It is.
I think.
Yeah. And then The Substance is out. And, I think I'm Still Here has a scheduled release too. I just don't remember the date. So a lot of them are coming out, which is good because I think in prior years not all of them have. But as you mentioned, we do have the Rokus available for people who would like to stream the films because a lot of them are hard to find. And I know a website that you and I both recommend a lot to find out where things are streaming is Just Watch.
Yep, justwatch.com. Yep.
Now, some of them are streaming right now for rental, so they're not free. But some of them are, like $3.99, $5.99. They're not crazy.
Yep.
But again, I'm hoping for some DVD, Blu-ray releases of those too.
Yeah. And for people who are unfamiliar with how the Rokus work, essentially, we've got Rokus for all the different streaming platforms, the major ones. And you check it out for a week. You just hook it up to your home Wi-Fi and you hook it up to your TV, and you've got full access to that platform for that week.
Right.
So if you go to justwatch.com, you look and see what platform these movies are streaming at. They are very popular, the Rokus are, so make sure you get your name on that wait list. And so you can get that, and then basically you've got whatever's in that catalog.
Yeah, whatever's on there. You can watch the movie that you're looking for and a host of
exactly.
others.
Exactly. So definitely take a look at those.
Yeah, and keep an eye also on our movie matinee schedule because as long as certain titles are covered by our licenses, we'll try to show those. So, and we have shown some already. I think Conclave was earlier and stuff like that. So, and we showed Wicked already. So keep an eye on that as well. Those are Friday afternoons at Aspen Drive. Sounds great. All right, Becky. Well, it's been 10 years, and so it's really nice to be able to have done this so long with you. And we'll look forward to the broadcast on Sunday. Yeah, we'll have to see who if we got it right. Yeah, right? Exactly. So, and I hope all of our listeners watch, and you can see how right or wrong we were. Right. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. If you want to get started watching these movies, the best place to start is our website. Head on over to www.cooklib.org, where you can search our catalog to find some of the movies that we talked about in this episode. While you're on the library's website, make sure you also take a look at our blog, where we regularly write about the things we've been reading, watching, and listening to lately, along with some great genealogy tips, local history stories, and so much more. And if you enjoyed this episode, please tell others about it. Let them know that they can listen to this episode along with any past or future Cook Memorial Public Library podcast episodes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever people like to get their podcasts these days. This episode of the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast was recorded in Digital Studio One at the Cook Park Library in downtown Libertyville. Visit the Digital Studio page on the library's website to learn more about how you can use the studio spaces at either of our libraries. We will be back soon, but until then, keep reading, keep watching, and keep listening.